Welcome to the Hell is Chrome podcast. Thank you so much for joining us if you're in the live stream. I know there were some comments late in the show last week, but we did not check the comments before we signed off. So we certainly appreciate folks for commenting and engaging with us during the stream. And this week we will make a better effort to monitor those comments throughout the show, not just at the beginning. So I wanted to get that off right at the top because we do have some stuff to talk about today. There's going to be some elections coming up in the union. If you're looking to become a leader, there is news on tickets. I haven't heard this yet, so looking forward to that. We'll get the latest on recognition of the union from the club and some other events coming up. And to help us unpack all this, producer and co-host John Cross, the outgoing union president, breaking news right now. John, what's up?
How you doing, Andrew? I'm a little bit exhausted, a little bit worse for wear here in terms of my body and my health, which leads to my changed caption down there under my name, um, along with I guess to rip the Band-Aid off, as we said before the podcast starts. Me leaving. We're not going to be continuing as president basically after this cycle, which ends here just in a couple months.
So you're not going to continue on as president. You will forever be the George Washington of the San Diego supporter union, wooden teeth and all. Can I ask what, is this like a Joe Biden situation, or did you have a moment, an embarrassing moment in some kind of high profile debate, some public forum? Did your brain turn to mush in front of millions and millions of people? I certainly hope that it's not that.
Well, I'm sure I've had plenty of embarrassing moments. My post-COVID brain is a little bit mush. That is what is contributing to a little bit of this problem.
Come on. You're no Sleepy Joe, John. Let me just
And I want to be clear that I didn't, people misunderstand. Not that I'm continuing to be president like it's an automatic thing, because elections are coming up. I won't be putting my name out there to continue to run for president. But yeah, the decision mostly is health related, as we've shared many times on this podcast. I'm a long COVID sufferer, and the original plan for this president position was it would be about 4 to 6 hours a week. I would say over the last month, I'd be lucky if I would put in 4 to 6 hours a day on it. I think also because of my being on medical leave from work, this has then almost turned into a full-time job, and it is for my body, and a bunch of things came to a head really over the weekend. And while I think as early as Labor Day, I was looking at not continuing as president, not putting my name out there again. But I wasn't, I hadn't closed the door on it. I was leaving things open, but it was likely it wasn't going to happen. I'd say by the time the official recognition came around, I was likely that I wouldn't be on the board, because you got to be a member of the board first, even to be in consideration to be one of the executive officers. Partly because of the work.
So is that, let me ask, I hate to interrupt, but because we've kind of talked about some of this nitty gritty stuff before, is that in the new ratified bylaws and everything? Like, so a member of a supporter group can't just run for leadership?
What do you mean for that?
Like, say I'm a member of the locals. I'm not really, I'm not on the Alliance Council or whatever, the board.
Right.
I'm not a part of leadership of the locals, but you know what? I want to be a leader in the union. Can I run, or I have to find?
Sure.
Oh, okay. So it is open. You don't have to be, because you said you have to be a member of the board to be.
So the board and the supporter group council are two different things. You do have to be a member of the board, but any union member can run to be a member of the board. You don't even have to be affiliated with an SG council. That's a typical, more nonprofit representation. It's a member-run organization, so any member can run for a seat on the board. We call it the Board of Representatives.
Okay, and that board is where the executive leadership comes from?
Correct.
And is that board the one that exists now with the president, vice president, and treasurer? All that, is that the current board?
Right. So, I mean, this is a good segue to kind of talk about the elections a little bit. Right now, the board and the executive officers are one and the same. But the executive officers, ideally through our bylaws, should be a subset of the board.
Gotcha.
But because of a startup, right, everything you have to do to get moving forward, we did name 4 executive officers, and they just kind of de facto became the entire board because we didn't go through a process to elect any board members. There was some conversation about doing that. I actually pushed for doing that. I thought it would be better to have more board members, but there were some, I think, legitimate concerns at the time that we didn't have an election process. There were a lot of logistics also, like how do you take care of that to get people?
Well, this is like the big trade-off that we the source of endless debates early on was like, do we concentrate a lot of power in the hands of a few people, or do we concentrate a little power in the hands of many people? And
right,
there's pros and cons to each of those, because it'd be great if one person didn't wield a lot of power, but then to get anything done, you have to get like this mass consensus, and nothing would get done, right? If everything was up to a vote of 40 people, right? Like nobody's going to agree on anything, and nothing will get done. So
the fewer the people you have, the faster you can move. And the more people you have, you might get better input overall, but you move more slowly. So part of that conversation was keep it the way it is now and have all these positions we have finish in December, so they didn't even last for a full year. And then we have full elections in December once we have a larger membership base, we have more experience, we have more things in place so that we can elect a more fuller representative board of our membership. And then from there, figure out the executive officers and still have our supporter group council, which is a different body within the union, but also wields some strong checks and balances on the board, so that the board doesn't, wield too much power.
Mm-hmm. Well, great. So those, I guess, information would be coming next month then, right? If these elections happen before the end of the year, is that the plan?
Yeah, well, actually, information will be coming out this Friday, to the membership. So it'll be posted in Discord. I'm sure there'll be a link in the Chant app just to redirect people, but there will be a full election schedule posted. There'll be a couple other documents that will happen a little bit later. We're working through the last step right now of how many board positions will be open, because per the bylaws, it can be a minimum of 4, has to be at least those 4 to cover the 4 executive officer positions, up to a high of 21, and it gives us some flexibility for what to do. So right now, the last hurdle is deciding how many we're going to offer right now, and what's on the table at the moment is 15. May not get 15 people who are even interested, but that's okay. And if you get 7, then that's your board. The way our bylaws are structured, it gives us some flexibility that even if you lose a board member, that board member doesn't necessarily have to be replaced until the next regular election cycle, unless you fall under 4, because that's the minimum you have to have.
Okay. So, all right. Well, that's one thing to look forward to. Another thing, I guess the big topic over the last few episodes has been the recognition status of the union. We were off 2 weeks ago because you had a presentation. The union had a presentation at the club HQ. And last week we spent a lot of time talking about just kind of, I think at that time there hadn't been a whole lot of word from the club about being recognized or not. I think we talked a lot about what being recognized means and like what that kind of unlocks for the union, the ability with the tickets and all of that stuff. The first step is that recognition. So That being said, what is the update this week on recognition?
Well, I guess the update is we do have official word, and the official word at the moment is we're not recognized, um, nor are we provisionally recognized. So there are some additional things the club would like to see. They have sent us another document. We're reviewing that. There will be a meeting on Wednesday from different leaders from the union to discuss some of those things that were in the document, um, and we go from there. I mean, that's kind of where we are. We're not recognized, and the process is ongoing.
Huh. So you were given one set of standards for recognition. You met all those. You presented to the club, and they came back to you with another list of things.
I would say we believe we met all the requirements, and there are some, I'll say some clarification points that to figure out kind of where we land as a union and between the club on certain things within those official requirements that we think we've met.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you for some clarification points now. What's the holdup? What's the hang up here? Is it they don't like the number of board seats that you got? You don't they don't like what?
I'm not going to go into the details of what they are specifically here, but they are things, I guess, like that. I mean, there are certain things where the club thinks we should have things a little differently than we have them, whether it's a number of something or a limit of something or whatever it happens to be. And that's part of those discussions to find out on Wednesday, are these for us to find out also, are these clarification where they just want to understand our position, or is it something that the club is looking to see changed?
Yeah,
I would say there's probably a couple of things that look to be changed, but that's part of the conversation we'll have on Wednesday and see where we land.
So I'm a little bit confused. I mean, to me, it sounds like okay, the club is its own incorporated corporate entity, right? The union
Correct.
is incorporated. The union is its own entity, right?
Corporate entity.
Yeah. So who is the club to come and tell another entity, you're the way you're doing things is wrong, or the way you're doing things is in such a way that we're not going to recognize you? Like, eh, I mean, I don't know. Is does the union have a lawyer?
Well, I think there's a distinction between the first 2 points that you made. Should another corporate entity be coming in to tell a separate corporate entity how to run their business? No, in the short term, but this is a different kind of relationship, and the club, I mean, frankly, the club holds the power here of whether they want to officially recognize, and they can set whatever bar that they want in terms of official recognition. And the union then needs to decide whether it wants to meet that or not meet that. So, I mean, technically, it's not telling a group how to run their business, but it's also saying, if you want to be over here, this is the hurdle. You have to decide whether you want to meet this hurdle or not.
Well, let me ask you this, because this is something that is, I think, unique in soccer to other sports, right? Like, years ago, like the Dallas Cowboys have a True Blue fan club, right? Where you pay $15.
Right.
They send you a bumper sticker and a keychain, and you get to be a member of the Dallas Cowboy fan club, right? But, it's not like a group of fans organized, that club and they work with the Cowboys, right? It's just the Cowboys. The Cowboys run the Cowboys fan club, right? It's not it's why doesn't SDFC just run their own supporter group?
They could. They very well could. I think, we probably both know the answer to that. That's certainly not the way it's normally done, and would certainly
I guess
create.
I'm asking why.
Yeah.
Like, can you explain a little bit why this weird kind of relationship exists in soccer between a club and like a union?
Yeah, historically, I mean, supporter groups or supporters, just in general, you know, well, one, the club's tied directly to the community if we really look worldwide. And supporters, usually in a certain end behind a goal, over time have banded together. They sing songs, and that's where a lot of the game atmosphere comes from. That is not necessarily, everyone around the rest of the stadium contributes in the same way. Although they might, the whole stadium might get caught up in a chant or a song. In the U.S., we kind of, I think, in our history of soccer, kind of forced some of those things to happen. We had fans who saw the historical supporter ends in a lot of grounds around the world, try to recreate that. And they did successfully in a lot of different ways. But in MLS, with its highly corporatized structure, there are a lot of rules and regulations. And the team, SDFC, presented us with some very specific requirements that if we wanted to be officially recognized, that is, be able to bring the drums and the flags and everything else in, because a stadium like Snapdragon is highly controlled. MLS games are highly controlled. So if you want to be able to push the boundaries and have things permitted within your supporter section that aren't generally allowed in a stadium, like drums or even trumpets, if you wanted to add some other musical instruments, or big banners or flags, then you band together, you work with the club to try to make that happen in a designated section. And then the club also helps communicate for everybody else, because of the way the American sports experience works, that, hey, look, if you're going to be in this section, this is what you should expect. People are going to stand, flags are going to be waving. You may not be able to see the match the entire time. You need to understand that this is what you're getting into if you have a ticket in this section. So that's the kind of the short version. But yes, then to get that recognition status, we need to work with the club. I mean, well, it's a choice, right? We choose to work with the club in order to get that official recognition status. And it always, there is a fine line between your identity and strength as a union versus being officially recognized by the club. You want to be recognized, but again, depending on who you ask, there's a different level here at what cost. For some people, I would say on one extreme, any cost is worth being officially recognized. If you go the exact opposite way, recognition isn't worth sacrificing the union and the supporter group culture.
Or maybe
right?
compromising your values.
Right. You could say it's compromising your values. We have people on both ends. We have people in the middle, kind of spread out. So how do you navigate those as you move closer and closer to match day? Although I think within the current makeup of the union, the people who were more on the extreme end of don't compromise your values are probably not as involved or involved at all with the union at this point.
Oh yeah, do you know anybody like that?
Yeah. Because I think there's been some deal breakers for some people along the way. That is just, it's too much. And that's the constant battle. And I think we are entering, part of what has happened where we are right now. I think coming into this last weekend, we were entering a very big stage of, where do we land as union membership? Do we land on preserving the union and kind of the, as some people would argue, the values, the integrity, and everything else? Or do we push more towards official recognition? And I think it became pretty clear over the weekend that the majority of the members want to pursue official recognition, but making sure that everybody's there for that home match.
Okay, so it's a little difficult now, and I'm not giving you a hard. I'm trying not to give you a hard time about this, because you already said you didn't want to go into certain details. But from what you're saying, it sounds like either some demands or requests or suggestions have been made from the club that could be seen as compromising some of that independence and some of those values, and most of the people in the union are okay or are on board with that.
I would rephrase that slightly, that if we go on the spectrum that I was using before, that people who are on the end of the spectrum of this, hurts us in the long term as a supporter group, yes, I think people would argue that we should take a different stance. And I think people who are on the side of recognition to be in the match day, for especially the home opener, I think we're more on the line of, what's we we can do this now and make changes down the road kind of thing.
Mm.
And I think that's and not, I mean, I don't want to give the wrong impression like drastic changes or anything, but like this might be the tough pill we have to swallow now in order to get where we want to be, and then from there we can try to do other things. Um, so it's tough when you have a large group of people. We're now well over 400 people, probably all told, all our members. We're pushing around 450. You get a lot of different opinions, and you get people in leadership positions who have very strong opinions one way or another. But I think there was some action by the supporter group council over the weekend. Again, not to give too many details, but there was, I'll just say, a unanimous decision among every identified section. That would be our approved ones, recognized all the way through our probationary ones, to move in a certain direction, and that would be more along the lines of making sure everything's in line for that opening match day. I think that's about the best way to put it without getting into a ton of details.
Okay. So we do have a comment in the chat. I was hoping you could put on the screen. Paul is in the chat from the locals. He's asking if is it at this point, right? Like, so for folks that are listening on the podcast, Paul asks, my opinion, if it ain't independent, it's just a front office owned hype team. Are we at that point? That seems like an extreme. Is that just
Well,
hyperbole? I mean,
I think that depends where you fit on the spectrum. And I mean, to be clear, everybody should know where I am on this and kind of understand, because I am probably in the minority. There were some decisions made over the weekend that I wouldn't necessarily choose to do myself, but as president, as I've said repeatedly, it's not my job to enforce my will on the group. The group has clearly spoken to what they want. It is my job to try to, see how best to make that happen. And in part of doing that, I've also been asking a lot of questions, to make sure the position that we're going to take now is something that actually can be seen through, if that's the direction that we're going to go. So, I've had a variety of things where I've been in the minority in the discussions we've had and been outvoted, but that's part of a democratic process. I mean, this is, I'm torn because personally, it's not the direction I would like to see us go for some of these things. But the flip side of that is the process within the union is working exactly the way it should.
right.
Right?
So
Supporter group council got together, made a decision, presented it to the board. So, and that happens in a democracy sometimes. Like, individuals don't always get what they want as part of that. So for me, my role as president, not my role as John, an individual member, and I will still speak up about certain things, but my role as president is to try to make sure that if that's the will of the group, that we find a way to go that direction.
Yeah,
but in terms of, because someone asked me this earlier, and again, I think I should be fair. I don't want to mislead people. My health concerns are certainly the reason for not continuing. But part of that is because there are some things that I personally would like to see challenged, but I don't have the I don't have the time. I was going to say time or energy, but my body can't put in the time necessary to do this. And really, the union also, regardless, probably needs someone who at the front who feels more in line with where everybody else is. So, I mean, all those things have contributed to my decision. The bottom line, it was the health piece. I
Mm-hmm.
just can't do it.
Yeah.
But I probably, like I said, would have been stepping back from president anyway, because the union, if this is the direction they want to go, really needs somebody to take the lead that is more in line where the rest of the membership is.
Yeah. It makes me sad, really. Like, uh, I don't know how many people listen or watch this. Know your background with doing the soccer shorts and like documenting, doing all the videos about when the locals was built around San Diego Loyal. Um, you know, John has been at all of these community soccer events, either with a camera or very visible with his large sun hat and just kind of a fixture at all of these community events. And it makes me sad that like this community, the supporter community in San Diego, um, that some of the people who I kind of, uh, I don't know, kind of that I kind of was inspired by when I got involved in supporter culture and supporter work. Um, a lot of the things that attracted me to being a supporter was these values, right? Like I don't want to be a member of a fan club, right? Like I don't want to be just some, you know, pom pom waving cheerleader, that, is going to support, everything my club does, regardless of my morals or anything, I do like the idea of like a Timbers Army where, this supporter group, took a stand against their ownership over some very worthy things and, really made a statement and stood up for the community and pushed back against some bad ownership stuff. I know that other supporter groups have, not attended Open Cup matches or not attended Leagues Cup matches in protest over their clubs not playing in the Open Cup, right? Like these are the
Right.
types of things. I like to fight. I mean, and I like to stand up for what
Really?
I think is right. And to me, standing up for what you think is right is like it's like the easiest thing to do, and it's also like the noblest thing to do is to stand up for what you think is right and to not demur or kowtow because your opponent is more powerful than you or you perceive that your opponent holds all the cards. I really do believe that unions are strong and that unions have more power than they realize, whether that's in labor or with, soccer
Sure.
supporters. And it just really makes me sad that a lot of the people who inspired me when I came into this, you know, a lot of them did not make the jump over to SDFC. A lot of the leadership who built the supporter culture that we had around San Diego Loyal, this energetic, vibrant, independent, philosophy and attitude toward the game and toward the club. Uh, a lot of the people who led that and were on board with that never transitioned and made the jump to SDFC. You know, I I'm not blaming anybody. You can support who you want or not support who you want, but it does make me sad because I feel like those voices are the ones we needed the most in this whole process. I think some of these people were missed, and then some people moved away. Not blaming
Sure.
anyone there. But it makes me sad that more of that kind of those values were lost, right? Whenever this work started with SDFC, and some of us did come along and did try to bring um some of this part of that supporter culture, which I think fairly and accurately does represent the supporter community in San Diego, right? But little by little, and I'm one of them, that was involved, but I just you can only fight so long, before it's time to step away, whether that's for your mental health or your whatever. You know, I couldn't I could not compromise anymore. Once I saw the compromises start, I was out. Um, but it just makes me sad that, this kind of snowball effect, right? It's like this self-fulfilling prophecy. Like the more things the club does to push away that type of supporter, the easier it is to get their way and to manipulate and to be the little puppet master of the supporter group, because all of those dissenting voices have given up. You've beaten them up. You've beaten them out. You've pushed them away because you didn't want them maybe to start with, right? I don't think SDFC gave a shit about having any San Diego loyal supporter as part of their supporter group. They expected us to thank them for killing loyal and just be grateful to be invited to have a seat in the room. So, you know, that process by pushing out dissenting voices, well, now you have a consensus. You have a majority in the union who is going to be more pliant to your demands, and more willing to dance for you whenever you ask them to dance, and jump through these hoops and ask you how high. Thank you. May I have another? That just makes me really sad that's you know supporters of this club, and I'm talking about the rest of the stadium also. They just deserve a better supporter union than that.
Yeah, if it was just some of the stuff you said in terms of, I certainly have my own views that are probably different than a lot of people that are currently within the union. That's not, I mean, I don't have any problem being in there and still trying to represent those views in different arenas so people hear it. I think, when I say some of the stuff is changing or changed, I mean less of that than for me, it was very important as president to try to create a union structure that was very much, you know, I'll say rules based. It was not people based. There were procedures and policies, and we worked on them because I think in the long term, when you have a large group of people with lots of different interests, having people buy into those rules and policies and calling people out when they're not following them is the only thing that really keeps the group together because
That's how
everybody knows how
institutions
they can have a
persist,
voice.
right? Like that's how
Right.
institutions persist through changes in leadership and changes in membership, is that set of rules and regulations, right?
Right. Everybody knows the rules and requirements. Everybody knows how it works. Everybody knows what happens if you don't follow it. There's an agreed upon procedure and system. And I think the biggest change I've seen in the last probably 2 weeks is I would call it an unusual push to cut corners. And I think that's really the the I told you it's already taken up a bunch of my time, and I have consistently called people out routinely, and everybody knows, that I will if things aren't being followed properly. Um, so I think the time it takes to do that, talk with people, work with people, and when you call them out, show them also like this is the pathway that you need to follow, and if this is what you want to do, this is how you need to go about it. I'm happy that as a union we've been able to establish that at least in terms of writing. I don't think we're at the point where it has become ingrained as part of the culture. And some of the things I've seen very recently are individuals who I would say are pushing to cut corners. And I think as soon as you do that, everything unravels.
Yeah.
And in the bigger picture of me with my health and the time all this is taking, I just I can't put the time and energy in there. I really hope there's a strong enough foundation and people are willing to take what has already been set up to heart and kind of still moves forward with that. So there is the space, because I always felt it was important for people with different voices, especially those people who disagreed with me, to have a platform to be able to share their opinion and their voice. That there was always a way that people could share their thoughts and feelings, and nobody's silenced. And I fear that if once you start cutting corners, it makes it easier and easier for whoever kind of gets in power, so to speak, to um, start to kind of silence people or not listen to people. And I think that is where you truly then lose this idea of everybody working together. No one's going to agree on everything. They're not all going to share the same opinions, but I think we had gotten to a point where, as I said routinely, we get together, we hash our shit out, we make a decision, and we move forward. I hope the union continues to do that, whichever way they go and however things change along the way. Um, I really hope people don't, that you don't end up with the tyranny of the majority, just because they have more people and they're also not really following the rules, and you end up having that happen. And I don't mean for any one particular group. I mean, even if it's two or three groups kind of
Yeah.
banding together. Um,
Well, I mean,
I,
but
I,
then again, the factionalism, I mean, that's how, I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about, you know, political power and like, that's how coalitions happen. Like you find
right.
like-minded groups, you ally together, you control the vote. Like, I mean, it's not like your nonprofit
But
is
as long as
subject
you're
to the
working within the system.
yeah, you're not subject to the Brown Act. Like you don't people don't have to like disclose. You can't have you don't have to have more than three people meeting. You have to make a public announcement if more than three union members are having a meeting. So uh, shout out to my civil government heads out there, the Brown Act. Let me ask you about this because I know we have to cut it a little short today. You mentioned there might be some news about tickets. Now, this is a pretty abrupt pivot, I know, from what we're talking about, but there is news about tickets, and I definitely wanted to hit that on the episode. So, what can you tell
Yeah,
me
well,
about tickets?
I mean, people aren't probably going to like it, but we had been talking before about we'd probably hear something by the end of October. We're basically at the end of October. So right now it looks like things have been kicked back that you probably hear something by the end of November. Maybe probably sometime in November, but the timetable has been pushed back. So rather than people wondering, hey, it's almost the end of October, are we going to be hearing anything? There were some initial plans to try to do something November-ish, um, but that has just been pushed back. So it's still on the horizon,
Oh my gosh.
just
I
been
can't
pushed back
believe
a little bit.
I teased news about tickets
I know.
40 minutes ago. I just
And
want
that's
to
our news.
issue a formal apology to anybody who listened to the first 30 seconds of this show for promising you ticket news, only to 40 minutes later find out that you're not getting any ticket news until
And
the end of
Andrew had no idea what the
November.
ticket news
I did
was.
not know that that was the case. I would not have teased it, and I would not have waited 40 minutes to bring it up again had I known that that was the news we were getting. So, um, my apologies to anyone and everyone. I do assume that most people in our audience is probably on Discord and probably already knew this anyway. So, but I do feel like I have to say that. So I think there was a Chrome Ball event. There's another Chrome Ball event coming up. What else is on the horizon?
The big news is drum practice on Friday at Liberty Station. So check Discord and check the socials for that. I don't know if there's a particular group hosting it, but it will be open to everybody in the union to get down there, learn some songs and stuff. It starts at 6:30, The actual drumming will begin at 7. It's going to be by, let me double check this. I think building 191. Yeah, building 191.
All right.
So check that out. Also, the election schedule if you're interested. And in running for a position on the board,
Now,
the
this is
election schedule
the
will be out on
union
Friday.
election, not
Union
Tuesday's
elections.
election, because
Yeah, correct.
we do need to
Union
talk
elections.
about next week's show, which is going to be on
goodness.
election night.
I know. Totally forgot about that.
I would raise a motion that maybe we push to Wednesday and not have a show on election night. What do you think?
I don't know if I can do Wednesday. I'll have to look. We may have to just skip a week due to the elections.
Okay.
We also need to talk about the future of the show. If you're not part of anything for SDFC, and I am not going to be a member in 2025 due to my health situation, we're going to have to talk about where the show goes or how
the
we
Hell
might
is
pivot.
Chrome podcast might have an expiration date. You know, it is funny for me hosting a SDFC supporters podcast when I've declared I will not be an SDFC supporter. You know, because of I started out as one, I would say. Like, that's not how this whole thing started. But I think there was a lot of value in talking about this process as it was happening. Whenever we were kind of on the ground floor of this, you know, we talked to the guy from the other supporter group in the Midwest, and you know, there wasn't a lot of
right.
Like, I couldn't find a lot of stuff about how other people did this, how other supporters got their groups launched with an expansion team. So the notion that a podcast week by week kind of chronicled this process, as painful and detailed, and you know, I know we've gotten into some pretty you know, not entertaining nitty gritty organizational stuff, but I think there's value in that, and I'm glad that we've done it. And I think that, you know, seeing things through, as long as you're the president, you know, I think it's pretty helpful for listeners or people who watch the stream, you know, just for me to ask you questions and present like some sort of, I'm the uninformed person and I am asking you questions and you're telling me what's happening. I think that it's helpful for people, because I think I probably have the same questions that other people have, you know.
Yeah.
T-shirts, for example. Any word on merch?
Yeah, that's going to have to be a question for others moving forward here. Right? No word. There's no definite word, and I think with the official recognition stuff, there is no bandwidth to put towards that stuff, because there are new things get presented and then they take attention, and that's really, frankly, preventing the union to be further along. I would say we're about 6 weeks behind where I thought we'd be at this point.
You know,
There's
I
just
don't,
a
I
lot
really,
of things we have to respond to.
it's very, you know, I mean, we talk a lot about frustration and disappointment, but it is really disappointing because in my mind, like, supporters know how to be supporters, right? Like, the people that made this union and formed this union know how to support a club. And if the club wants the best supporter group of supporters that it can possibly have, then, you know, you need to let them just do supporter things. You have to kind of, you can't have a heavy touch and try to push all of the you know, the game pieces in the places where you think they should be, because, you know, you gotta just trust your supporters that they know what they're doing and that they know how to support, and that, for like, if the club had not been, you know, strict or shifting their demands or whatever, say this recognition happened 2 months ago, like, or 1 month ago, you know, where would things be right now? You know, maybe there would be merch. Maybe the tickets thing could have come through, right? Like, I feel like so many things could already be in place. But like the club can't get out of their own way. Like, just let the union be the union. Let them conduct themselves as they want to conduct themselves. I really it's really frustrating to watch a self-defeating mindset, right? Like, you think that you need to tell people how to be supporters and that you need to tell people how to do this. But you can't do that. Like, they are that thing. Like, they know what they're doing. Like, it's just shows like a fundamental just disrespect of your supporters. And like, I keep coming back to that. I think I said it last week, but time and time again, the vibe and the message that I get from this club is, we don't respect you. You should thank us for being here. By the way, you're welcome.
I think there are others who feel that way. There's certainly people who don't feel that way. I want to be clear, but I think there are
Oh,
people
I'm sure there are people
who
that do feel that way. I am very
yeah.
thank you so much for being here. I will do whatever you want. I will change whatever you want. You want the name to be different? Oh, no problem. No problem. Oh, you want us to write these bylaws in this way and have it be this way instead of this way, even though this is what we decided? Sure, no problem, whatever. Just because a group of us got together and went through this painstaking process, back and forth negotiating, and this is what we came up with, just because we did all that work amongst ourselves and fought in tears and all that work, because you want it to be a little bit different, fuck all that. Let's just throw all of that work out the window, and we'll just do what you say. Why didn't they just design the damn thing themselves and then offer it up? Here's the blueprint for a supporter union. Pick which position you want. Oh, you want to be the president? Okay, cool. This is the structure. Hey, you want to be this? This is the structure. Like, why make people do all of this work only to turn around and say, actually, it should be this way instead? Like, if you already know the way it should be, then why don't you just do it yourself? Why have all of these people go through all of this work? And it is work. It is labor. It is emotional labor. It is difficult. There is a back and forth. Everything that happens, every line of rule or bylaw or whatever, is a result of a conversation and a negotiation and a back and forth between people who are giving their own time for free to make this thing work. And when you turn around and say, actually, it should be this way instead, and if you don't do it that way, then you're not getting recognized, it's so disrespectful. It's so goddamn disrespectful. And it just shows a fundamental misunderstanding of who your supporters are. These are not stupid people. These are passionate people, but they are smart people. They are educated people. They are people who understand ramifications of every decision that's made. And they have decided that it is worthwhile. And that is why it is the result of a consensus. And when you just say, fuck that, your consensus sucks, it should be this instead. And if you don't do this, you're not getting recognized. It's so disrespectful. And for people to do all that work and to get these results, and then when the club tells them it's not good enough, just say, oh, yes, sir, never mind. Like, I just cannot imagine not standing up for myself or my members and demanding a little more respect. So it's just I did not mean to go off like it's so frustrating to sit and watch this happen. And I think that in a few years this is all going to sound really silly, and I think things are going to smooth out and work out for the better. And I'm sure the supporter section is going to be great because San Diego is great and the people here are great, and they're not going to let a club with their thumb in their ass ruin this supporter section as hard as they're trying to ruin it. But anyway, so we looking like we're going to take the next Tuesday off for the election. Gosh, another emotional night for all of us. Really looking forward to Tuesday. John, is there anything that we need to touch upon before we're? You know what? I am going to check the comments. Paul is giving me fire emojis. Thank you, Paul. Okay, I promised that I would check the comments before we got out because we had some good stuff last week that we totally missed. John, anything else we've got to hit?
No, nothing else we need to hit, and I will have to 100% support your comments on the frustrations of dealing with the club when we put in all the hard work and then they turn around and make changes. That is one of the things that has significantly led to the unbelievable workload that I've dealt with, and in turn my health. So I mean that is probably the fundamental reason for not continuing is I just can't keep doing this over and over and over again.
I'm really sorry that that's how it's turned out. Like I know how much work you've put in and how hard the work is, and you know, like the thing is like not getting your way is fine. Like we're all adults. You lobby for your position, and if people choose to go another way, that's fine. As long as it's our choice, as long as it's a choice we made together, a decision we made together, the result of a negotiation, the result of a dialogue amongst ourselves, and that's what we come up with, then that's that to me. Like to go through all of that work only to have it, just completely uh have water poured on it because, you know, whatever reason. Uh, you know, it's I think you've given a lot to the community soccer community in San Diego, and definitely you have my respect if however far that goes.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew.
All right, so probably not next week. Sorry, y'all. If there
We'll skip a
is
week. Yeah.
if there's some earthquaking news, if we get ticket prices, if we get something like that, um, I'm sure John will text me. We can do an emergency pod to let you know, so you won't miss anything. But unless that happens, you'll see us in 2 weeks.
Yep. Sounds good. All right.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.